So, schönen guten Abend. Hello, everybody. We are live with our lecture here on YouTube, and I'm waiting for anyone just to join us. And if you join, maybe you can tell us where you're from. So, we see you. Oh, from Sweden. Hello there. Quite interesting to always see where you're from. So, those who don't know me yet, I'm a physician, originally from Switzerland, and I'm living since 31 years in Texas, USA. And this is where I'm sitting right now. I see hello from Belgium and Madrid in Spain, Hong Kong. Yeah, perfect. Love it. South Africa, Austria. Oh, we Netherlands. I mean, we are really international here. That's fantastic. So we enjoy a little bit seeing your names also. We have Poland, Germany, and some hello Damaris. So some familiar names, which is always very nice to see. Yeah, so I'm a physician from Switzerland, and 31 years ago, I was on the list to, become a little, have a good career in Switzerland, let's say it this way. And they told me in order to do so, it would be nice if you go to, hello, Marcel is just from the Schweiz. And in order to do so, I should go to the United States for a year at least and write one scientific paper and then come back and everything else should be fine. So I left with my family, two little children, two suitcases, three suitcases, and we moved to Texas. And it was not very easy because I didn't speak English very well, and there were some other issues with names of medication and all these things. But that was 31 years ago, so we never left. We were supposed to stay 1 year. We never left. I'm still here. And Texas and the United States has been very good to me and my family. And so we kind of love it here. But I always come back to Europe. And I would assume most of you are from somewhere in Europe. But I see, again, that we have people from Hong Kong and South America and other places. So I did a little bit chit chat to let people come on. And at this point, I kind of would like to start with what the lecture is. And yes, ja, heute ist nur auf Englisch. I just answered a question. This whole lecture was announced in English, and I was asked to speak in English. I do both languages and other languages, but today this is an English lecture because we have people from all over Europe, and not everybody speaks German. So let's just get started because I don't want to go too long. It's evening in your time zone for most of you, maybe morning in Asia. So today's topic is antioxidants, and it's an enormously difficult topic. Why? Because most of you are in Europe, and the regulatory permissions to talk about antioxidants are extremely strict in some parts of the world, such as Europe. And I'm going to come back to that and explain a little bit better for you to understand why science sometimes shows a good result, but then we cannot talk about it really in maybe product sales or just in general as a population, because the regulation are different than the science. But today, again, antioxidants, I want to explain to you what are antioxidants, how do they kind of work. I mean, we're still learning. We're not quite sure 100% yet, but we're still learning. And here you see my titles. I'm a Dr. Med or MD, medical doctor. I'm also an MBA, Master of Business Administration. And then I'm an anti-aging doctor and functional medicine doctor, and also concentrating on olfactory medicine because I love the essential oils from Young Living. And Gary taught me a lot about the oils to carry on into the future. And that's what I'm doing. So let's start about the antioxidants. And let me just see that I can move these slides. And here they go. Now, normally I don't spend too much time with disclaimers. But today I'm going to spend quite some time with disclaimers because this lecture, this workshop is a little bit a little dangerous because in Europe it's so difficult to talk about antioxidants. So the opinions that I'm going to give you in this presentation are really my opinions, right? And not Young Living's opinions, because Young Living is completely bound to the regulatory, but Young Living is an international company. I'm in the US, so I have a little bit different one, but now I'm talking Europe mostly. Not everyone is from Europe. So, it's kind of, so what I do is my opinion, and I encourage you to really verify what I say and, create your own opinion. And Young Living shall not be liable for any harm resulting in connection with this content. So just wanted to read that and spend a little bit of time on this. And here comes another disclaimer. And that's about antioxidants, right? You see all these antioxidants, blueberries, or maybe I'm not even allowed to say that, right? The raspberries, pomegranate, I mean, all these things, wolfberries. This YouTube Live is in Europe, and Europe has very, very strict rules when it comes to things like antioxidants or also probiotics, for example. In other parts of the world, you can very speak liberally about, let's say, probiotics. You're even encouraged to speak about them. Whereas in Europe, you have very, very strict rules on things like probiotics, or it's what we do today, antioxidants. So I just wanted you to understand that. But let's talk about antioxidants, free radicals, and I like to show you stories with picture that you can remember. So when you see an old car, like in the ocean, somewhere in the water, the metal will rust. It will create a reaction together with the water, with the moisture and the oxygen in the air and nitrogen in the air, and it will create rust. I mean, you have this all seen that on your own cars or any metals that you have outside, if you have a backyard or so. Now, rusting, we call oxidative stress, right? Because it has a little bit something to do with oxygen, and it's really a stress in this case for the metal. And you can prove that when you take, for example, an apple. Take an apple, cut it into pieces, and take an orange or lemon, which has a lot of vitamin C, and we know that the vitamin C is an antioxidant. I mean, I guess we can say that much because it's common knowledge. So you squeeze the lemon or the orange on one half of the apple, and you look after 5-10 minutes, that piece will still look almost fresh. Why? Because it has been protected from oxidation by the air with an antioxidant, in this case, vitamin C. Now, the other half, which you see on the right side here, well, that you don't protect with an antioxidant, and it will start rusting. And after a few hours, it probably looks like this. And so that will explain to you that rusting is not just isolated to stuff that is like metal. It's also the same thing for organic things in life. And it's the same thing for our body. So you have cells here in your body, trillions of them. And on the left, you see a normal cell. And then this cell is getting attacked by free radicals. And you see the cells start getting some damage. But when there's too many free radicals, when there's too much oxidative stress attacking the cell ultimately will die and fall apart. And that is part of aging. And there's a whole theory about free radical damage and aging. And that alone shows you that the structure is changing of a cell, as you see here from left to right. And as the structure changes, also the function is changing. And that allows you in multiple parts of the world, including Europe, to talk about structure function claims when it comes to dietary supplement and beverages, things like that. But again, in Europe, the rules are much stricter than in other parts of the world, but there is a few structure function claims also allowable in Europe. It's just more difficult to get the permission to use those. But this is what happens in your body, inside your cell, when you are rusting from the inside out, when you are attacked by free radicals. And I want to explain to you a little bit free radicals and normal cells with a nice little wedding story. So here you see many, many couples. They all want to get married at the same time. And I'm an older person, so for me it's always man and woman, but you do whatever you like. And so in this picture, I have many couples, man and woman. The bride is the one that is desired by the man who wants to marry her, and everybody looks happy because they're all coupled up. They're all, we have enough grooms, we say, for the men and enough brides for the women. And then we open the door. And in fact, that's how it looks like in your cell. Let's do that first. In your cell, you have a cell with the nucleus in the middle, and you have atoms in the cells. You have electrons. These are little pieces that have an electric charge that are like flying around, like we fly around the sun or planet, stars flying around planets. We have electrons that fly around the cells. And we always have kind of two electrons, more or less, that are paired. So there's always an electron pair. And when this is the case, we have a normal cell. So it's like the room I just showed you before. You have two that go together. Everybody's happy. Same thing in the cell. You have two of these electrons that are together. Everything happy. And now we open the doors and we let free radicals. I mean, they look pretty radical to me, right? We let them in. And what do they want? They also want to marry. So they want the bride, but they don't have one. So what are they going to do? They're going to steal it. They're going to take it away from those couples. They're going to just take a woman. And what happens within seconds, it's going to be a big battle in that room. Everybody's going to be fighting with each other. And the same thing happens in your cell. So when free radicals take away electrons, the cell is not balanced anymore. And you're going to see this battle going on. And this is why the cell gets injured. And eventually, when this battle never stops, it will be destroyed. And so what can we do? Well, we can bring Superman, right? So Superman brings electrons. And we know, again, from science, that antioxidants are electron donors. They donate electrons. And so Superman, in this case, is bringing more brides because we don't have enough of them. And if he brings enough brides as an antioxidant, as a superhero, then we have couples again that can marry, and we have a total happy end to stop with, right? And so I hope with this story, you're going to remember what is an antioxidant, what is a free radical, what happens in the cell, and especially the fact that antioxidants are electron donors, amongst other things. So now, when you look at the cells in the human body, when you're alive, your cell is exposed to at least 10,000 free radical attacks per cell per day. That's a lot of free radical attacks. The only time when you do not have free radical attacks in your body, and these free radicals are mostly also produced in your body, and antioxidants can also be produced in your body. The only time when you don't have free radicals attack anymore is when you're dead, when you die, right? Then the metabolism stops and there's nothing going on and there will be no more free radicals. So having free radicals in your body is a normal thing. Having antioxidants in your body is a normal thing. And as you can see, when you have a disease or just conditions like fever, these attacks will increase to over 100,000 or maybe millions per cell per day. I mean, this is just so big and so massive, right, that it's almost incomprehensible to understand. And let's just look. I mean, if you live in a part of the world where you still smoke a lot, I guess today the part of the world where we see most smoking is in China, but still, when you're in a part of the world, Europe, I see a lot of people smoking in Europe, a single puff of a cigarette will create trillions of free radicals attacks in your airways and your lung. So it's not just the bad stuff in the cigarette themselves, like tar and some other toxic substances. It is the free radicals that you take in. And I didn't know how many puffs you have per cigarette, so I looked it up this morning. It's 15, roughly, depending on how deep you inhale. So you multiply that by 15, so you're around something like 30, 40, 50 trillion free radicals per cigarette. And I think there's 20 cigarettes in a pack. So when you smoke a pack a day, we're talking about quadrillions of free radicals that just unleash on your lungs. So, I mean, that would be a good moment to stop smoking. Now, when we go back into the past, and here you see my wife, Ellen, and myself, and we're an older generation. My wife is ageless. She always looks young, but I have aged a little bit, a little gray hair. But we grew up in a time in the Swiss mountains where, the air was clean, the mountain was clean, the snow was nice, the water was clean, the plants were healthy. And we didn't have big freezers and fridges, so we had to go and shop every day. And we were able to shop a lot of organic vegetables because at that time, way less fertilizer, herbicides were being used. So we had quite a healthy lifestyle. You can call this an antioxidant lifestyle. And we call this a low oxidative stress, right? The stress to our cells was somewhat low. And when you have a low oxidative stress, you are basically healthier, you're more vibrant, you're more active, you're more young, you have more energy, you're more balanced, right? So these are all good things of a very healthy, active lifestyle. But today's world looks a little different. Look, you have all these like pollution, freeways, too many cars in the city, smog, you eat the wrong stuff, you have fertilizer, herbicides, you have all these things that just damage us and create all these free radicals, too much sugar, all these cigarettes, all that stuff. So today, many of you listening, and if I'm in a region like that, which I'm not, luckily, we have high oxidative stress. And high oxidative stress means you will age prematurely. When you're 60, you already look like you're 90. You're going to have more chronic diseases. You're already going to start getting like heart attacks at the age of 40, 50. You're going to get more cancer. Yeah, I can say that word because we know that free radicals will attack your genetic information, create mutations, and some of these mutations can create cancer. Your skin will have more wrinkles and you will be low in energy and will need earlier a wheelchair, for example. So high oxidative stress for many, many different reasons is not really something that we should try to achieve. We should try to achieve low oxidative stress. So now you need to again understand, and I'm going to show you this a couple of times, right? And I will explain to you why. On the left side, you see science. On the right side, you see legal and regulatory. And in the back, you see a world map. And you see like a flag for America and a flag for Europe. I just took two, but there's also Asia, South America, Africa, and so on. So the science is the same all over the world. If we scientists, physicians, biologists, physiologists, whoever is doing the science, if we do science and we publish it, the results will be the same. Whether you're in the US, in Europe, in Africa, it doesn't matter. Maybe they will be translated, but the results will be the same. So when I show you science, I'm just showing you the results that we obtained when some scientists did a study. But that does not mean in certain parts of the world that you can claim that this is true and you can make claims with that. So the regulatory part is completely somewhat disconnected from the science part. And that's especially true in Europe, where you have extremely many regulations about everything, basically. So you need to understand when I talk about some science results, and I will show you some science, that doesn't mean that you can go out and just say, oh, I have a product that looks like this, and so I'm going to say this and this. And that's especially true about antioxidant. You have to be extremely careful what you say. And so here I'm just going to start showing you some science and relating to free radicals and antioxidants. So we know that free radicals change lipids, cell membranes, proteins. These are hormones. These are things that are created in the cells. And they change the DNA. This is where your genetic information is carried. So these free radicals play a role in aging and a number of diseases. I told you that already. Free radical damage can also lead to a loss of enzyme activity, which means your metabolism cannot work properly. And the damage to DNA, we talked about that, can lead to dangerous mutations causing, let's say, serious diseases, to be a little bit more compliant. But luckily, nature has given us, endowed us with protective antioxidant mechanisms, right? And that's the summary of those scientists that have looked over many articles. And they found that a higher intake of antioxidant has been correlated to a lower incidence of various diseases. Again, something you could not say about the product about antioxidant. And in Europe, you cannot even say that about antioxidants. But on the science side, I can show you what has been found. Now, free radicals and oxidants, antioxidants are not coming only into your body from the outside, right? You have internal free radicals that are mostly made from what we call reactive oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur inside your cells doing normal or abnormal metabolism. And abnormal metabolism could be when you're sick and have fever, you have an increased metabolism. Your body is equipped with an antioxidants defense system that is guarding against these free radicals. And no matter where in the world you are, no regulatory government or regulatory group can tell us not to talk about what's happening in our body. I mean, these are antioxidants that are created within our cells to protect us, right? So that cannot be regulated. And so what it says here, you can also influence probably the free radicals with antioxidants from outside sources, the same way we can also be attacked by free radicals from outside sources. And so several approaches to improve human health and longevity use, in fact, dietary antioxidants, meaning antioxidants that we find in plants and hence give to you in form of food or beverages. And then there's another statement that the regulatory issues will probably say you're not allowed to say that. But again, that's a science statement. Antioxidants have also shown to maintain freshness when they measured that of products and prolong shelf life. So don't use that term when you just talk about antioxidants. I'm pretty sure that's not allowed in Europe, but clearly science shows that. So again, you are just gifted with so many healthy things in life that you should not forget that you have those at your disposal. And hopefully, you have the money to buy a lot of good, organic, healthy stuff. Now, each of these things you see here has an antioxidant power. And we can measure that. And in fact, in the United States, we have one very famous laboratory that does basically nothing else but measure the power of the antioxidants of certain vegetable and fruits and beverages or whatever it is. And we call this measurement ORAC, oxygen radical absorption capacity. In other words, how many free radicals can one thing absorb or neutralize? Now, because we're in Europe, I cannot show you these numbers, right? So most of you, again, I see South Africa and I'm here from all over the place, but most of you are from Europe. I cannot show you these numbers because the European agencies do not allow us to do that in a presentation like the one I'm giving you today. And let's shift a little bit. I'm going to talk about very special zones we're going to find all around the world. And that started many decades ago with an Italian physician who went to the Italian island of Sardinia. And he was asking the question, where on this island that is famous for old people, where can I find a more older people, meaning 100 years and older than in other places? And in order to do so, he did not go and interview the people and counted how many were 100 years old and older and still alive. No, he went to the cemetery or the graveyards and he looked at the gravestone. And he looked out how many were 100 years or older when they died. And he counted them. And then he looked at where was the cemetery and he could make several conclusions. And two of his conclusions were the more stairs a village had, the older the people got, and the steeper the stairs were, the older the people got. And so he took a pen with ink and dropped blue ink on these villages on the map. And so this is how we created these zones. Now, in the meantime, we had an American who also for decades went around the world to look for these special zones. And he then basically took the color of the ink and called the color and the zone. He put that together and he trademarked that name. And that's why I cannot tell you the color of the ink with the zone, but I just call them special zones. So when you go around the world, you're going to find a lot of people that live in areas where they really have an antioxidant lifestyle. And with that, I just don't mean like a lot of antioxidants. I also mean movement, better sleep. All of these things will have to do social integration, brain function, how much you're challenged or not. All of these things will have to do at the end with your lifestyle and with your antioxidants. And so when you go around the world and you find zones where people are 100 years and older. So again, here in Europe, you have Sardinia. We talked about that. But you see, so there are more, but I mean, this is just a good selection of special zones where people get 100 years and older. And when you look at those, you make maybe a couple observations. One, most of those are somewhat around the equator, right? So not quite, but somewhat, which means it's moderate temperature. It's not extreme. It's not extremely hot, like in some parts of Africa, for example, but it's also not extremely cold, like maybe in Greenland. So it's somewhat, measured temperature. The other observation you make, you have islands like Sardinia, Okinawa in Japan. I was just there. That's the newest young living farm that grows shell ginger, fantastic. And maybe one day I'll tell you more about that. You have other islands like in Canada. So there's a bunch of islands. And of course, when you look at what people do on islands, they go to bed early, they get up early, they go fishing, they eat a lot of fish, they eat a lot of algae. And typically it's a little more difficult to have this like Western pollution with fast food and all that, although it's penetrating the whole world. The other areas are very high up in the mountains. And so high up in the mountains, you have less wood if you're above the tree line. So you cook less, so you have more raw food. You have to walk a lot to get to your vegetable and fruits that you collect or plants. And you have a little less animals because they have less food maybe up there, and you don't have the wood to burn and grill the meat and things like that. So there's different things that you see. But one of the regions you see here is in NingXia. NingXia is a region in China close to Mongolia. And NingXia is very well known in China because NingXia is the region where they call it the herb valley. So the Chinese herbs have to be very clean and healthy and not polluted. And so many of these herbs come from that region very high up when the water is not yet polluted and they don't use fertilizer herbicides on the field. And when you look at that region, you see some interesting facts. So when you look at China overall, you're going to find 5 people per 1 million people that are 100 years or older. But when you go to the NingXia province, you're going to find 80, almost 20 times more. And that's kind of fascinating. And Gary Young was reading about that, and he went to NingXia because he wanted to know. And in NingXia, he met with a very, very old physician, and he started talking with him and said, why are people getting so old in this part of the world? And the physician said, well, we're sleeping well, we have no TV, we basically have very few cell phones at the time. I mean, we eat healthy, we walk a lot, we're still integrated in the social environment of a family, so the elderly are still respected and have a function and not just dying away. And then basically he said, and we also have a very special fruit, and we call this fruit the NingXia berry. And I'll talk a little bit more about the names and all that. But Gary said, I'm very interested in this. And so over the years, Gary went over and over again back to NingXia to look at this special plant, which is a bush that grows leaves and berries. And in fact, these are now real pictures from the Young Living Farm, which is a partner farm we have in NingXia region in China. That's where we grow NingXia plants. And I'm not just saying NingXia berries. The only time you can say NingXia berry is when this type of plant is grown in the NingXia Valley or the NingXia region. If it's grown outside the NingXia region, you have to give it another name, and I will tell you that. But here you see the farm. You see very nice how healthy all that looks like. And here you see the people that are harvesting. So Young Living also is really making sure that the salaries are really good for those people so they can make a living. There's no abuse of like labor and so on. So it's much more than just harvesting a few berries here. And so this is the result. You get these berries, and then you also see you have a little bit leaf sometimes, a little stem on it, and it's difficult to remove that. And so you can do two things. You can dry them out, and this is how it looks like. Gary was sitting here next to fields where they were drying these berries. Or you can kind of start washing them, processing them, and then puree them. And then the puree go in these big containers, and they be shipped around the world. Now, in the case of the NingXia Young Living Farm in the NingXia region, those big blue, how we say, tons or whatever you call them, they are sent back to the US to be, used for a product. Now, again, you have seen this before. I just want to make sure you understand what I'm doing. I may even ask questions in the upcoming slides and say, do antioxidants have any connection maybe to this or that? And that's a scientific question, because I know on the regulatory side, I'm not supposed to ask that question. So I'm a physician, I'm a scientist. I'm going to stay on the science side, but I'm always going to tell you, you have to be really careful. You representing a company and the company representing products. You have to be very careful about the laws and the regulations, and we have to follow those, when we talk about the company and the products. But this is a very, very interesting study. And I changed the title. I said, instead of a dietary supplement, which basically says here, it says even worse. It says an antioxidant supplement. Well, because this was a study made and published in America, and we're allowed to say that. I mean, again, Europeans cannot prevent us from saying that in America, but I show you this study. In Europe, we call this kind of dietary supplement a very tasty drink. And so I changed the title to a study, very tasty drink. But most scientific studies have author or article information. We also call them keywords. And I kept them small, so you're not getting too wild reading them. But I'm highlighting 3 of those. So this article has to do with some keywords. One of them is NingXia Red. Another of them is Wolfberry. And another of them is antioxidants. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. But that's what was looked at in this article. Now, I'm going to show you the results of that study. And when I do, I talk to Compliance Europe. And at this point, I really want to thank Compliance Europe on guiding me on how to do this and how to add the correct disclaimers. So here I will read it to you. Attention. There are no approved health benefits of NingXia Red in the European region. None. In Europe, this product is marketed and sold as a tasty drink because it's very good. It tastes good, so it's a tasty drink. But what I'm going to show you now is the study that we did in the United States. And again, the study is the same all around the world. What we do on the regulatory side later with the result, that depends on the region of the world. So here's the study. We have a study number. It was a clinical study, meaning it was done with humans. The title was The Effects of Dietary Supplements on the Quality of Life. It was randomized, meaning there were 2 groups, and it was randomly assigned to one of the 2 groups. People had never had this juice before, this drink or this beverage or this dietary supplement, so they didn't really know how it tasted, so they couldn't tell whether they got it or not. And it was controlled, so they looked at, made sure that everything was really properly done, and they then checked the 2 different groups to see if there were differences. And it was evaluated by independent analysts and approved by an ethics committee. All these things are very important when you do studies. So there were 160 volunteers, so it's a nice study, between 18 and 70 years old. There were about the same amount of men and women, and we had 2 groups. We have the tasty drink group, I'll just call it like that. I changed that a little bit. And they took about 60 milliliter per day for 60 days. And then you had a placebo control group that did not have this tasty drink for 60 days. Okay, and then they compared. And this is what they found. And I can say that because, again, it's a scientific finding. In the tasty drink group, they found that 35% more energy. They found about the same amount less physical disabilities. And that typically goes in hand, of course, with the energy. The more energy you have, the more you walk. The more you walk, probably the more you pain. That probably increases first, but overall will then go away. So maybe that's the reason. It's not quite sure, and we didn't look at that, or the people that did the study. But they also looked at the immune system, and they found that in the group of the tasty drink, they found healthier defenses and the reduction of inflammation. These are very dangerous words to use, but again, this is a science study. I'm just reporting what the science published. And they also found better sleep, 21 minutes per night in average, which is huge because many of you sleep like 4, 5, maybe 6 hours. That's way too little. And this is why Young Living has released this year some sleep products, because it's extremely important for many different reasons to have good sleep. So this is really, really very important. We also found 23% reduction in daily stress, and with that together, of course, better mental relaxation and mental wellness. That's a good way to say it. And somewhat surprising, we found better breathing function. But in order to explain that, I will come back to this study a little bit later. But this study was made in 2021 during a pandemic, and the results were published in 2022. And so they were looking at what happened in the world at the time. And they were looking also at breathing, because that was a major issue at the time in the world. So this is a different thing. So I want to make sure that now this is not the study anymore. This is a survey. It's a survey made by a company you know very, very well, because you're here on the Zoom. And what they did, it's a very biased survey. What they did, they just asked the people who liked this tasty drink and said, how do you feel? So this is a very biased group. It's not randomized. There's no control group. These people liked this thing already. So of course you're going to get, favorable results back very likely. And so 66% said we have more energy. So it's a different number than the study. And now you know why it's higher, or very likely higher. But it's interesting to see that even a survey shows similar result than what the science showed. And then they looked at sleep. They asked, how do you sleep? And 50% said we sleep better. We have more sleep. And so again, it's a biased thing. It's a survey made by a company with people that have already been consuming and like this tasty drink. So just want to make sure. So this is a slide that is not dangerous at all for me. This is just telling you that sleep health and body weight is a huge issue, not just during the pandemic, but overall it's increasing around the world, and it's just creating a lot of diseases we don't want. So in this study, they looked at 125 adults for 1 year. So that's a pretty good study. And they evaluated the connection between sleep and weight loss. And the results showed really clearly that better sleep was associated with significantly greater weight and fat loss. So if you want to take something else away that has nothing to do with antioxidants, please go and sleep at night. You need to sleep at least 7.5, 8 hours. That's probably the sweet spot, and maybe even more to really start losing weight. If you sleep less than 7 hours, you're going to gain weight because the hormones change, you eat more sugar, and there's many reasons for that. So I'm just saying, and you're going to see later why I'm showing you this slide, but this is a very good slide for me to show. And again, I'm just telling you again, I want you to understand. In the following, I'm going to ask some scientific questions. I'm going to ask, does this maybe have something to do with antioxidant? I'm not making a statement, it does, but I'm going to ask the question. And then I went into the medical literature and I looked if that question was somewhere answered, and I'm staying on the science side. That doesn't mean that you can take this information and make claims about the product or about an antioxidant, right? Again, these are two different worlds, and not just two different worlds. The worlds are different depending on the area of the world you live in. So, and I see we just got people from Singapore and some other places. So really, really depends on where you live. So I'm just repeating this warning to make it really, really clear that we are living in a crazy world kind of when it comes to presenting results. But I kind of then asked the question, and many others, is, well, when we look at these older people in these special zones, we do not really find a lot of obesity. They all have kind of an optimal body weight. And we also find that people who live a healthy antioxidant lifestyle, let's say it this way, not just consuming antioxidants, but just doing healthy things like workout, and which also produces antioxidants inside your body. And we asked the question, if you have a lifestyle like that, can you have weight loss? And here you see something called Eat 5E. That's a program I developed over about the last 15 years that includes a healthy antioxidant lifestyle. And most people reduce their body weight to an optimal weight when they do that. And I'll just tell a little bit more about that, but this lecture is not about that. And so when we asked about, is there a connection scientifically between antioxidant and obesity, we can look at some studies. And here's a review of multiple studies, which in this case is even better to show, right? The review shows that the oxidative stress, when not counteractive by an intact antioxidants defense system, plays an important role in various health conditions, including obesity. Yeah, so on the science side, there is a clear connection between internally generated antioxidant and potentially between antioxidants taken from the outside into the body and obesity. Maybe a lack of those creates more obesity. And so the findings of multiple studies suggest that those that you eat and drink the antioxidants, including vitamin C, E, beta-carotene, and other phytochemicals, those coming from the plants, have a positive effect on body weight, body mass index, fat mass, and metabolic markers. So that is really an interesting observation on the science side. Now, we always then ask, why is that, right, on the science? And again, I'm not talking about regulatory here. I'm just talking about science. Why would people lose fat when they are in an antioxidant-rich environment, say it this way? Well, you have two types of fat. You have subcutaneous fat. That's the fat that is underneath your skin. And you also have visceral fat. Visceral fat is the one that is inside your belly where your gut is hanging. Maybe that fat was intended to protect your bowels and gut, but this is fat that is very difficult to remove. And this is fat that is responsible for many of the cardiovascular diseases and other diseases that we are fighting these days in general. And so when you lose weight, you typically first lose subcutaneous fat. That's why you get wrinkles. You get, like you see it on the neckline, many more wrinkles, all that. Maybe you see on your arms that suddenly, like, there's no more stuff and your skin is hanging down. But your visceral fat, you don't really see. You start realizing it when you start losing circumference, because that fat plays a role. And so coming back to this study, visceral abdominal fat, you now know, is one of the main causes of metabolic and cardiovascular diseases. And in this study, very, very good, 10,000 adults were examined, right? The scientists found that the visceral fat could be significantly reduced with high antioxidant intake. So scientifically, not a doubt that when you consume antioxidant, you have a good chance, if you have extra visceral fat, to burn that off, right? So let's just say it this way. On the claims and regulatory side, you cannot use that, right? But this is at least how we found out, and this is a recent study, not too old. This is a study from 2024, earlier this year, right? So this is brand new information, and we all thought we already know it all. No, we don't. So here, another question. Could antioxidant have something to do with your eyes, right? And again, it's a valid question we can ask in science and medicine. And we can look and we see there are some medical articles that have looked at that. And here I rewrote this a little bit. So often I use the same words in the summary, but here I rewrote this a little bit to make it a little bit more compliant, let's say it this way. A variety of plant-derived antioxidants have shown benefits for several eye conditions. This might be important because they asked the question, why would that be? And so this might be important because the overall increased cumulative exposure of the eye to high energy visible light, meaning blue light, high energy, coming from computers, coming from cell phones, coming from iPads, coming from television, coming also from the sun. This is why you need to protect your eyes in the sun with sunglasses, with a hat. This is why you should set the settings of your electronic devices to night vision or the night mode, so to take away the blue light, which penetrates your eye and causes oxidative stress in your eye. So on the science side, no doubt how this is happening and what conditions do happen. But when you take antioxidant, there seems to be a protection, especially against this high blue light damage in the eye. Again, on the regulatory side, you cannot talk about antioxidants and vision. Now, very important thing, especially in the time of a pandemic, but just in general, and whether a pandemic or not, because over the thousands of years we had many of these pandemics, so it's independent of pandemic. The question whether antioxidants have anything to do with the immune system. And here again, we can find some interesting studies. And here, there's so many studies that I even find a bunch of studies that had to do something with wolfberries, a very interesting fruit that you and I may consume on a regular basis, right? And so these wolfberries, we call them Lycium barbarum in the Latin name, that's the botanic name. In the common word, it's called wolfberries. And it has shown to have several beneficial properties. Again, I reword it a little bit here. But we know without any doubt at this point that in the immune system, it has multiple effects. And one of the effects is that it supports the bacteria in the microbiome. There's no doubt about that. I wanted to show you that, but compliance asked me, rightly so, not to show it. But we know that. We know which bacteria are influenced by antioxidant, by certain antioxidant, and others by other antioxidant, and the microbiome are all these bacteria in your gut. And it's extremely important for the immune system because it's also known in science that about 70% of the immune system is in the gut wall and is highly influenced by this microbiome. So if you do something very good for the microbiome, then you do something very good for the immune system. And so here again, another study that mentioned Lycium barbarum, right? They have some compounds in it that regulate the immune system. So again, on the science side, medical side, no doubt, we know exactly how that works, or we think we know exactly how that works. There's probably more to it than we know. But they say there's at least two ways that have been discovered. One, again, is that these antioxidant fruits or vegetables support good bacteria in the gut, in the microbiome, which then strengthen the immune system. And they also reduce a word I'm not really supposed to say, but again, we're talking about science and medicine here. They reduce inflammation in the immune system and strengthen the immune response. And when I say we talk about medicine here on this slide, not on the talk. On the talk, because we're talking for a company here, we're talking about wellness, we're talking about beauty, we're talking about fitness, and just overall health, right? And we're not talking about disease or anything like that. So, and here comes the third one, okay? And again, Lycium barbarum. Now, why do we have different names for this Latin name? We call it wolfberry, that's a common name, but we also call it goji berry, and we call it ninja berry. So let's talk about wolfberry. It's called wolfberry because lykos, Lycium is the Latin name, but lykos in Greek means wolf. And so we think there was a translation from Greek, Old Greek to Latin, and then they called it basically the wolfberry. Barbarum means kind of monster, so the wolf monster. But why would you call a berry a wolf? Well, it goes back to very old Chinese writings where you see pictures of this bush and this fruit together with the picture of a wolf. And I think somehow this made it through the world, the ancient world, or by the time we named this plant. So the common name is wolfberry. Goji berry is easier to explain. That's the Chinese name for it. And goji means a bush that has fruits. So goji berry is just like it comes from a bush that has fruit. And ninja berry, I already explained to you, that's only if that berry is grown and harvested in the ninja region. So in this study, and I made a disclaimer down here, and I'm going to say that first. This study was not made by Young Living and not with a product that Young Living sells. We're not the only one selling wellness stuff in the world. So in this case, they took this wolfberry juice daily, and they gave about the equivalent of 100 gram fresh wolfberries to people that were 60 years and older for 60 days, 2 months. And then the effects were compared with a placebo group. Again, a very nicely done study on the science side. The wolfberry group had significant improvements of various measures that they did in that study, such immune defense. We now kind of know why. Well-being, similar to what a tasty drink study showed. Sleep, similar to what a tasty drink study showed. Memory, and energy. And again, energy, similar to what the tasty drink study showed. So it's kind of nice to see across different studies in the world, scientifically in that space, that different people in different part of the world find similar findings, right? It's just that kind of something on the science side has worth, right? It means something. Now, I'm coming back to this tasty drink study, right? And I showed you the keywords already. And if you want to know, I clearly down here is the name of the journal, the pages, when it was published in 2022, and even the scientific link where you find the depository of this article. So you can go and read it for yourself. And that's what I always said. That's what I said in the first disclaimer. Go and read yourself and, make up your own opinion. But again, so this group used a dietary supplement, and I will not say what it was. Both groups had the same incidence of respiratory illness. Why respiratory illness? Because it was done during a pandemic. And of course, during the pandemic, it was very interesting to know if somebody had, an upper respiratory infection, let's say it this way. And so there was no difference whether you took that product or not. Same amount of people had this upper respiratory infection. However, the duration of the infection in the group that did not take the tasty drink was about twice as long as compared to the tasty group drink group. So in other words, if you were consuming during the study that tasty drink, your upper respiratory infection was gone in half the time compared to the other group. And that may explain what I showed you earlier about maybe some effect on breathing, maybe, healthy wellness breathing, something like that. And the conclusion, and this was a smart conclusion because they wrote it somewhat compliantly for the whole world, taking supplements rich in antioxidant in addition to other healthy habits, like an antioxidant lifestyle, promotes better health and helps to fight infection and diseases. So just kind of interesting to see on the science side. Now, let's go a little bit into the regulatory side, because for me, I'm also interested to know, I'm wasting a little bit of time going to read that because I'm not really one that likes to read regulations. But it was really interesting to me since years. I know in Europe, you can say nothing about probiotics. And for me, probiotics are so important. Other parts of the world are encouraging you and giving you a lot of claims you can make about probiotics. Europe is basically zero. And same thing with antioxidants. So here I looked at the EFSA, which is the European Food Safety Authority, and it exists to protect the consumers from bad products and from false claims, right? So this regulatory agency has all good intentions in mind. They want to protect you, okay? And they say when you talk about an antioxidant, it has to be a substantiated health claim. And that not just antioxidant, but kind of everything that has to do with health. And they say the claimed effect, if you want to say something about a certain product, for example, or a certain group of foods, like antioxidant, it has to be well defined. It has to be clear, beneficial physiological effect. But in order to have that, you need clear science and studies, the way I showed you, and many, many more. Because even what I showed you could be biased because I'm biased, right? Everybody has a bias. So you really need to do what we call a meta-analysis, where you look at the hundreds of studies that have been published to really look at, and then you have typically panels that work with the regulators, scientific panels, and they say, and of course, it's difficult because when you take antioxidants, you probably do other things. You sleep, your workout, your age. All these things play a role, and that's why it's sometimes very difficult to create this direct connection between an antioxidant and maybe a wellness effect. And then again, it needs to show a relationship between the consumption on that food and the or functional ingredients. And again, this is so difficult because there's so many relationships going on at the same time in the human body, right? So this is why this is so important. But they updated that in 2018 and said again, we will basically allow very little claims about antioxidants, which led to the answer from the scientists who said, okay, we know that EFSA, the Food Safety Agency, is currently involved in health claim assessment. And many antioxidant claims were negatively assessed. And I wrote that here they counted it at that time. And they say that only 3.5%, I think there were about 200 claims that were made about food groups and some other things, and only 8 of those were approved by EFSA. So that's only 3.5% of everything that's being submitted as antioxidant claim has been approved by this agency. And so make no mistake, Young Living is submitting claims for your products. But because only about 3% are approved, there's a high chance, like 97% chance, that the claims that Young Living very truly thinks about and submits may not come true. And the scientists complained and said, look, antioxidant actions are very complex. And this complexity is just not recognized in these panels and these regulatory people. And the methodologies used are just, especially when it comes to nutrition, are not sufficiently refined. So in other words, what they're saying, hey, regulators and science board of regulators, you need to open your mind and you need to read more and you need to look closer at these things, because we don't accept what you're telling us. I mean, just simple. And so this is the irony of some regulation. And again, this slide is completely my personal opinion, right? You make with that whatever you want. This is not Young Living opinion. This is mine. Dr. Oli, I have this opinion. The regulation are supposed to protect you as a consumer, so that a company cannot go out and write on a package of a product, it will do this, 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 and there's no proof of it. So the regulatory regulations are really here to protect yourself. But that can go wrong. When you overprotect something that you know is healthy, you see it everywhere. You see people that do this are 100 years and older and are healthy and don't have disease. And when I go into a store and I see like a really healthy, full of antioxidant food aisle, and I'm told, be careful, because there's no claims, and meaning no claims, it means it's not true, right? I mean, that's kind of the perception and the conclusion you can make. And then I go in the same store and I walk across an aisle that is full of toxic, ultra-processed foods and toxic products. You smell them. They probably change your hormones while you walk along that. I get nauseated when I walk in these aisles. I avoid them as much as I can. But they're also regulated. It just like gives the perception that just go ahead and use these products. While here, when you see all these healthy antioxidant-rich food, it just says be careful. So again, that's my perception. I think it's a complete irony. And I would hope that we get more and more people in these regulatory boards that have a little bit more open mind. And I also want to tell you, you're voting every year for your party, wherever you are in the world. And, those people you vote for, they are the ones that hire the people that make the regulations. And so if you don't like the regulation, it's in your hands to change them, right? I'm just saying. So I have my own opinion. I will continue to consume antioxidants, right? I mean, there's just no doubt in my mind. I've read enough, I've studied enough, I have worked enough in hospitals to see what difference it can make. And so this is my typical breakfast. Probiotic yogurt, I'm not making any claims. Some nice fruits, I'm not making any claims. Turmeric, not making any claims. This green powder here is a product have at Young Living in Europe with over 60, 70 fruits and vegetables rich in antioxidant with medicinal mushrooms. 50 of the fruit and vegetables are also fermented, meaning more probiotic, prebiotics. Again, not making claim. This for me is a very, very healthy breakfast, and I will continue to consume that. Regulation one way or the other way, this is what I consume for my own body. And so this is the antioxidant challenge, or I challenge you. Right? So this is a double meaning, this slide. We have a challenge because in certain regions of the world, it's a challenge to talk about healthy products, such as antioxidants. And Europe is one of those regions. And the second meaning of this slide is that I am challenging you to do the same thing I do, and Gary did, and others do, and many at Young Living do. Challenge yourself with an antioxidant lifestyle. Challenge yourself with antioxidants from the outside that you eat and drink, but challenge you with an antioxidant lifestyle so your body produces more antioxidants, and see what happens. And I bet that some of you will get just a much healthier, optimized body weight and better sleep and all these kind of things. So that kind of was my whole message for this whole workshop today. And really want to make sure you get that. And so if you like what I told you today, I create documentaries, docu-series, right? So video lectures where I show, like in a documentary movie, I put these together. And I have been working for the last 2 years on another little online education event that's going to come up within the next few weeks. And in order for you, if you're interested to watch, there will be 16 documentaries about essential oils, about essential oil farms, about harvesting, processing of essential oil, but also about products, about the farms themselves. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things I'm going to talk about: wellness, health, beauty, fitness. If you like that, just like me on Dr. Oli in Facebook, Dr. You see here the link, and please share that with other people. Because we really want, again, having like 50,000 and more people in that event. And it's going to be over 3 days, likely in the very next few weeks. So we're almost ready to announce it and start the marketing. So just write that down, go to my Facebook, like me, and then share with your friends so that you all get the message when we do this. And I would like to thank Conduct again in Europe, who allowed me to keep this slide in. What you do now, you take your phone and just take a quick picture of this QR code so you can find it. And it will bring you to a bookshop in Europe, because this is for the Europeans mostly here that watch. And I have a bunch of books written in German, but we also have the 2 books that are on the upper part here on both sides, also in English. They have a few of those. And then we have my antioxidant lifestyle, epigenetic lifestyle book here, but only in German. So right now, when you go to this code, you end up on the page with the German book. You buy 2, you get 2 for free. So get that. If you want English books, you need to go to this code, but then surf a little bit on the website of Pro Vita Oleum, which means in Latin, life for oil, or oils for life. And then just look for these books in English and see what they cost and what the shipping to your part of the world would cost. For those that are not in Europe, in the US, it's easy. You go to Seeds of Time or Growing Healthy Homes. These are 2 booksellers here in the US that sell my books. And then for those in Asia, probably in South America, probably Seeds of Time would be the one that you would contact and see how you can get that. So with that, I really want to thank everyone for having been here with me for this hour. We're exactly an hour, which I planned. I hope you understand antioxidants and free radicals, and you understand the difference between scientific results and regulatory issues, and you understand that you cannot just go out there and put whatever you want with a picture of a Young Living product on your Facebook site, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you do X. I mean, you need to follow the guidelines of your country when it comes to claims made together with these products. Again, that's separate from the science. You cannot just make claims, because otherwise Young Living gets into trouble and you get into trouble. So with that said, I hope you have a much better understanding of all these issues and how your body works. And I wish you a good evening, morning, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for listening. And with that, I will end this live stream. Goodbye.